been thinking about this this time, and I've been anticipating it, and it's in essence in the absence of being able to sit across from you and have coffee. For instance, I know John and Chrissy are on it, and I remember sitting across from John and us talking and engaging and filling each other in on life, on our progress as a society, which collectively we are that society. And so I just thought, you know, whether you have coffee in front of you or water or soda or just nothing, I wanted to sit down with you personally and just kind of go through some things. It made it a little hard for me to gin up some slides because I wanted it to be more, I crave the personal connection and the dialogue, and I know we all do, and we miss it. So in the absence of that, I did want to fill you in on what we have done and why we have done it, as well as the fact that you have been on our minds and you have been in our hearts on a daily basis. I can't say that any more plain or any more blunt. You are constantly on our minds and in our hearts. And as this crisis, if you will, started, I began to think of you. I began to reflect on you and who you are and who you have personified. And that personification has affected, and I'll say positively, using the infected word positively now, infected, all that the FSH Society is and all that we do. You are inspirational. You really are. It's the most optimistic people that I've met sometimes and many times in spite of the circumstances you're going through. You're resilient. I am amazed that, and again, as I even pause to think of that word and to think of all the interactions that I've had the privilege of having with you over these past almost 3 years, I just kind of get a little lump in my throat because you've risen to meet every challenge as they occur. And you're resourceful. I mean, I think of, you know, fixing a seat on a Segway to all of these other things that you've just figured out by out of the box, innovative thinking, how to overcome obstacles. And I've experienced your passionate commitment. Faithfulness, generosity are hallmarks of who we are as a society and who we and how we move forward and move forward together. And there is a willingness that causes you to reach beyond, and it humbles me. In that reach, you have produced significant advancements. And I don't want that to go unsaid. I looked up a definition of a society, and it's really, it's kind of a group of people that come together to achieve a common purpose, for a common purpose, either to live together or to pool their resources in order to, the synergy of those pooled resources. And so I just kind of edited that brief, not much. The FSHD Society is a group of people, families, patients, caregivers, friends, clinicians, researchers, industry partners that are working on our case, that have come together and worked together to achieve a common goal, and that's ultimately a cure for FSHD. And I'm just humbled and proud both to be a part of such an amazing group. I don't know about you, but perhaps it's because of the mandated stoppage of life as we know it, or at least as I know it. During this time of sequester, you might be, it might seem as though all activity and all progress has stopped or stalled. Let me assure you, it hasn't. It really hasn't. And I hope to take the next few minutes of our time, our precious time together, in order to outline some of the ways and some of the things and some of the ways we've responded collectively as a community. This is your response. This is the staff's response. This is the researchers and our industry partners' response that I'm highlighting. When we started out, when it began to be apparent that this coronavirus had infiltrated, if you will, or made its way to the U.S., and we began to see alarming results and alarming signs, and the numbers on TV every day, we began to ask ourselves as a staff, what can we do for our families during this time? And I want to take you through very briefly a quick timeline of about 9 days. Well, first let me stop and underline what we think what we came up with. We believed that we could provide connection to ease isolation. FSHD is an isolating disease enough, and we knew we didn't need to exacerbate that. But we also believed that we could provide value-added content to enhance lives. We believe that we need to fulfill our commitment regardless of the circumstances, kind of taking cues from our families that find resourceful and resilience and innovative ways to do things. We needed to fulfill our commitment to accelerate research and therapeutic development, perhaps in spite of the circumstances that we were in. And we believe that through inspiration, resilience, resourcefulness, and passionate commitment that we've learned from our family, we will be strong, we will stay strong, and we will come out of this time stronger together. We just believe that. And so the staff gathered together, and with these basic beliefs in mind, we began to formulate a plan. Now, to remind you, we've got really twin towers, I call them, but we've got 2 tracks that we run down simultaneous that are going to get us to our objective and goal, and that's treatments and a cure. One of them is accelerating research, and one of them is engaging an active community. So, what is our response to the COVID-19 crisis through engaging an active community? On Tuesday, March 10th, June Kinoshita had done a great job of connecting a panel of top clinicians, and we began to ask and then posted a blog on how COVID-19 might uniquely affect our families. And we wanted to get that information out just as soon as we could. On Monday, March 16th, the governor of Massachusetts, which is where our headquarters is, where our offices are, issues a stay-at-home order. So the staff had to become remote. Now, we had practiced this. We operate in a hybrid remote situation anyway. And to the credit of our wonderful staff, while we had to fit into new routines in our homes instead of in our offices and some of those things, we really didn't miss a beat. As a matter of fact, they have excelled far beyond my imagination, and I'm so proud just to be a part of them. But we realized we had to stay at home. So Tuesday, March 17th, working remotely, the FSHD staff met and considered ways to really capitalize on our confinement. Okay, if we are sequestered, if we are staying at home, how can we connect? Our industry partners are having to stay at home, and perhaps they've got time on their hands. Maybe they'll take a call from us now. Maybe they'll join a webinar now or an online meeting now. Some of those kinds of things we began to idealize. And very quickly, and yet extremely thoroughly thought out, on that day, we rolled out an 8-week plan program, and to go as long as it needs to, based on those previous statements that I read on the last page of those belief statements, if you will. And then on Thursday, just literally 2 days later, we launched it. We launched Sequester Camp, our first weekly Sequester Camp. It's intended to be informative, inspirational, and it's intended to make a connection point for our community on a weekly basis so that we eliminate that isolation, and yet we provide value-added content that's going to help strengthen their journey, if you will, and strengthen all of our journeys through the connection and the education. And we, by the way, are now in our 10th week and continuing to go strong. We made a commitment that as long as this lasts, we're going to keep doing this. Here is what that looks like now. It's grown from one event a week, Sequester Camp, to now we have on Mondays from 3 to 3:30 Eastern Time, we actually have a fitness regime by Bill and his trainer, Mitch. This came about because Bill's wife called me and she said, hey, listen, this has done amazing things for my husband. And so if you've not tuned into that, let me encourage you to do that. It's really awesome. In our first Sequester Camp, Brenda Miller, author Brenda Miller, offered to read to children every week. And so we've launched this and she's provided this weekly respite perhaps for families and some things. On Wednesday at 7 o'clock, Tim Hollenbeck, we can't say enough good things about him. We always do a monthly radio show, and he said, hey, listen, let's do it weekly during this time frame. And then on Thursdays, of course, at 1 o'clock, we launched our Sequester Camp series, which has been really wonderful. In addition to that, we began to look at our chapters and our chapter meeting. If you don't know, we have a volunteer leadership infrastructure that, in my opinion, is second to none. We have 27 to 30 chapters. I can't keep track of them moving in and out and growing. We've grown. And typically on a regular basis, perhaps quarterly, semi-annually, they have a chapter meeting. Well, we weren't going to let a little virus stop us from, again, the vital connections, providing good value-added content, some of those kinds of things. And so we just said, listen, let's have virtual chapter meetings. Some of our chapters meet virtually anyway. Let's just have them throughout our entire structure. And let's open it up while we typically send regionalized announcements for chapter meetings. So for instance, the bottom line, if you're in the Atlanta region, we scroll out about 50 miles or 50 feet or whatever distance, and we send to our whole mailing list in that geographic area. We said, let's just open them up to everybody from everywhere. I've been on a chapter meeting with someone tuning in from Australia at 6 o'clock in the morning. I've been on a chapter meeting where somebody from Israel's shown up. So people from all over the world are beginning to come and take part and be a part of something. Studies that they're involved in, and they take questions, and they're so patient and so kind to just stay on as long as we have questions. And it's been really good, really impactful, really empowering, if you ask me. Now, what's been our results of that? I know this is very small. Perhaps you can't read it, or perhaps you need, like I do every so often, my readers to look at it. But the results have been staggering, amazing. I just draw your attention to our Facebook reach. We began on a webinar like this, but then we connected with the Facebook Live audience. And we've had between 1,300 people tune in, or 12 or 1,300 through our Facebook reach, all the way up to 1,900 people. And you can see sequester camp 19, 1200, 1300, 1700, our fitness 1500, 1800, 1500. The radio show 1100, 1700. Story time with Brenda Miller, 700, 1000. It's just been phenomenal. Our reach has extended. Our community is being built. Value-added content is being delivered. Connections are being made. All of those things we started out saying, we believe this is possible. We believe our community can rise up and overcome this thing, even if we have to do it from our bedrooms or our offices or wherever we happen to be. We also realized in our response to the COVID crisis that we needed to adjust our meetings. The first half of the year was loaded with not just value-packed, but really crucial meetings in helping us move our therapeutic development initiatives forward, as well as moving our family connectedness, FDA engagement, et cetera, forward. And we realized that since that wasn't going to be possible, and because time was of the essence and we didn't want to lose that valuable time, that we found a way, and we found very robust platforms, very solid platforms, not just Zoom meetings we do locally, which serve our purpose very well, but we found good platforms, and the staff researched and reviewed and some of those things, and we're going virtual with both our Connect conference, with our Voice of the Patient Forum, which I'll talk about just a little bit more in a little bit, and then of course our International Research Congress and some other things that we're going virtual with. But we believe that while it's not as good as face-to-face over a cup of coffee in a restaurant where we can dialogue and do back and forth, we believe that not only the platform, but the movement forward will be advantageous for us and good for our families. The agenda is robust. It's a one-day agenda. Nicely, none of our sponsors have dropped out. Our sponsors have said, we're in there, we're in for you, we're in with you, and we're going to, we're going to see this through. And so we're just delighted by that. By the way, if you haven't registered for the Connect conference, the Connect Classroom, we're calling it actually, which is our virtual conference this year, please do so. If you registered for the Connect conference when it was going to be live, you're registered already. We've just moved your registration over to this format. But if you haven't registered, it's a great time to do so. So go to our website and do that. What's our response? We've got two, remember the twin tracks. We are engaging an active community, but we also are really accelerating research and therapeutic development. So our response to the COVID crisis in that vein, in that regard, has taken shape much like this. We began to consider options for our planned meetings. Again, like I mentioned, we had some hypercritical meetings that were aimed and targeted at filling some gaps in our preclinical research in order to expedite or smooth out regulatory pathways or solve some issues or problems, or again, gaps that still existed in our preclinical space. We actually had 4 workshops scheduled, 2 of them to occur in the first quarter. They're one-day industry workshops. And of course, we had the IRC. We had the Voice of the Patient Forum, and that was in cooperation with our team that does community engagement, as well as our team that does research and accelerating research. So we had the Voice of the Patient Forum with the FDA that we had to accommodate. We had those 4 industry workshops that were scheduled for this year, but specifically there was a genetic testing and that whole ecosystem and process, as well as a circulating biomarker workshop that was scheduled to go for the first 2 quarters of this year. that we had to accommodate. We wanted to accommodate in order to keep the ball rolling. We had our International Research Congress. This is the premier congress and conference for researchers for FSHD exclusively. It's the largest. We had a very successful one last year with well over 200 people gathering, and we were looking forward to continue to build on that momentum toward the end of June in Washington, D.C. And of course, things that we were partnering with but were somewhat out of our control. We weren't managing them, we weren't leading them, but we were concerned about them, and we wanted to stand in the gap if we could in any of the therapeutic development activity that was happening with our industry partners and from industry. And of course that includes most prominently the Redux trial, which was in process from Fulcrum. And we had met I think the beginning of March with Fulcrum, and none of us shook hands, and we all, did hand sanitizers and set apart. But we got a wonderful update from them regarding their commitment to move forward and some of that. But we knew that the deeper it went, the more that our families could be affected, and this particular trial could be affected, and some of that. So we were greatly concerned and wanting to live around them. Plus, there are other things in the development pipeline that we wanted to make sure that continued, and if we could help, we wanted to be there for that. And of course, the Resolve study. This is the largest study, largest clinical study or clinical observational study, and the longest of FSHD in the world. It involves our clinical trial research network, sites not only here in the US, but also over in Europe. And so there was the international component that we had to deal with. Dr. Jeff Statlin and Ravi Tawil have led that miraculously and wonderfully. And as of our last conversation with them last month, for instance, Dr. Statlin was still seeing patients. He was still seeing families at his clinic, although they had to make accommodations so that the family safety was paramount. But those kinds of things were still gone. But if we could help in any way, we wanted to. And of course, other funded research projects. We knew that there were some that were very critical, and with our perception, which became reality, that the academic centers were going to be shut down for a time or greatly limiting their process. We wanted to make sure that we could help in any way possible, or stand ready after the crisis to be there to help in any way we could to keep it moving forward. The Voice of the Patient Forum, we've decided to live stream. As you might remember in other presentations, we had connected and our FDA, almost got it mixed up, our FDA consultant for this process and our moderator for this event is James Valentine. He's a professional at this, if you will, if anyone is. And he's already done some live streams. He assured us that this could be done. It could be done on the technology platform that we already had begun to negotiate for the live meeting that we were going to have in April. And so we believe that we can have an outstanding, maybe even more participation, a broader participation during this live stream event on June 29th, the Patient Forum. And if you, just to remind you that from this Voice of the Patient Forum comes a report called Voice of the Patient Report that will be submitted along with, for instance, the Fulcrum trial. If they get to that place where they're submitting a package for approval with the FDA, that will be laid right alongside their package in order so that your voice will be heard, because your voice matters to the FDA in them evaluating not the safety of, but the effectiveness of a drug and what you would be willing to have. So this is of crucial importance. If you weren't registered already or haven't registered yet, please do so. Please register for the live stream event that's going to happen here. Your voice matters and your voice will be heard. But we've adjusted that so that we can still hit our timelines, so that all of our pharmaceutical partners and everyone who is working on a DUX4 reduction or elimination process, or therapy, if you will, that we don't hold up or slow down that process, that the FDA can hear from you in a timely fashion. And again, our staff has done a wonderful job of adjusting to this. Circulating biomarkers. We shifted from a June event, I think it was going to be in person, or a May event, to a June 3rd. We're going to, we've got assembled and committed a group of researchers, scientists, what you might call key opinion leaders. And we're going to invite our industry partners as active listeners and active listeners for that. And really our goal is to identify some biomarkers that are thrown off by DUX4 that could perhaps be circulating in your blood, so they won't have to take a muscle sample every time they want to see whether DUX4 is active or not. This is highly important. It fills a gap in that clinical trial preparedness, that clinical trial readiness, that preclinical space. It was one of our 4 workshops, and we're going to continue to do that in a virtual manner on June 4th. We're also moving forward with genetic testing. Interestingly, Dr. Jamshid Arjaman, he's our Chief Science Officer, if that name's not familiar with you. He's been talking with various companies. He's been talking with researchers that are in this space. We're going to be setting a time when we can really get together and look at maybe not the process, because actually PerkinElmer has commercialized a low-cost, high throughput, and more extensive genetic test, if you will. I think they've priced it out at maybe $699 or something. And we've been working with the PerkinElmer team. We've been working with BioNano. We've been working with researchers. We've had conversations, with so many others, that researchers that are in this space, because we want to make sure the whole pipeline, the whole, if you will, delivery system from, do I have it? Where can I get a cheap and effective diagnosis to see if I have it? How can I get another diagnosis, perhaps, that would give me deeper, a deeper analysis of it? How can I then give that diagnosis up for research, and some of those kinds of other things. But we're going to be moving forward with that also. And as I mentioned, our International Research Congress, by the way, both our Connect conference and our International Research Congress, we had a planning committee of peers. In other words, the International Research Congress was our researchers, our doctors. And then patients formed our Connect conference planning committee. They made the decisions to go to virtual. They either validated our findings, or they said, hey, we could perhaps do this and this. And they've really made this all it can be, and it's going to be fabulous. For instance, while we indicated that perhaps we would have a one-day meeting, our planning committee of doctors said, no, we have enough richness, and the field is moving at such a pace, and there is such new discoveries that we don't believe we can do this in one day. And we've already got this marked aside on our calendar, and I think we need to go for a 2-day conference. And that was encouraging to us that they were so energized and engaged. And again, just like our Patient Connect conference, this will be on a very robust platform. that will have some type of a pseudo connection component or portal, where you can maybe have some private conversations face to face with people on video if you click them and they accept, and some of that. So it'll be a great time. It'll be a great time of sharing and engaging. And again, our staff has gone over and above in making this possible just through their investigation. But what of our clinical research? What about the therapeutic pipeline? This is way too wordy for a slide. Matter of fact, this is a horrible slide. You never want to have a slide like this. But I didn't want to just pull out bullet points and have you think that I made these up. This is actual clips from their press releases. In Fulcrum, they've issued a press release, 12 of the 80 subjects. But matter of fact, they were going for 66 and they over-enrolled to 80. The nice thing about the Fulcrum trial is they launched in August, and they were expecting to enroll over 6 months, and they got full enrollment in about 3. Because of that, 12 of the 80 subjects have already completed their protocol. And another 16 I believe, had hit the space where they took that second muscle biopsy, which was so critical. That was a critical space. Now they're accommodating the other group. They're expanding their trial. They believe that they can have data to report in an interim analysis as they planned in the third quarter of 2020. They had planned for the trial to be finished by the third quarter and report on the findings in the third quarter, at the end of the third quarter. Now they might have an interim analysis and the top line data from all 80 patients they're really expecting to have in the first quarter. So a little bit of a delay, yes. An extension of the trial to see and to gauge and to test impact and effectiveness, that's a good thing. That's a good thing. And so they're moving forward. As a matter of fact, I did compliment Fulcrum, and all of our industry partners are important to us. We're pretty agnostic, but I did compliment Fulcrum because from my experience, 15 years in this business, they have been extremely thoughtful as well as extremely expedient on how they've rolled out their trial and how they're doing their trial. Because a clinical trial, an interventional trial, can go really wrong if you have the wrong endpoints, if you enroll the wrong kind of, you use the wrong protocol to enroll by, and it has nothing to do with the effectiveness of the therapy. But it can go really bad, and they've been very, very thoughtful about this, and I appreciate that, and I kind of shout it from the rooftop, so to speak. Dyne Therapeutics. Now, I just pulled these two because they are so recent, May 13 and yesterday, May 19. But there are many other pharmaceuticals, Avidia, Fatio, et cetera, Miracle. I'll miss some of them, I'm sure. We're working with a lot of them that are at different stages of the therapeutic development pipeline. But they just announced yesterday, Dyne did, that acceleration of programs in facioscapulohumeral muscular dystrophy through the exclusive licensing of technology. Jeff Statlin's joined their advisory board, and we're excited about all of that really. And they're helping really expand our clinical trial research network, I believe, in Europe. I think that's a former press release. And so our industry partners are moving forward in good fashion. Our clinical trial research network is still working. The Resolve study is still going on. Many of these sites, if not all of them, are involved in the Fulcrum trial, along with some other sites. University of Massachusetts and some others are involved in the Fulcrum trial. And those are still continuing on, as I mentioned. And where these stars are, in the fourth quarter of 2019, as it's indicated on our timeline, the FSHD Society stepped forward and said, listen, we'll over the next 3 years, we will both enhance the clinical coordinating center and your capability, building capacity in your center, as well as launch 4 new clinical trial sites. And those are in process. They are in process. And that's exciting to us. Stanford, University of Colorado Health Sciences, University of Texas Southwest in Dallas, and University of Florida in Gainesville. And we're excited about that. As a matter of fact, some of these doctors have already been on some of our virtual chapter meetings from these new institutions, already taking part and taking place. And they'll join a very robust global network that's moving on out. And again, to give you a reminder or a summary, this network was launched by funding from the FSHD Society, but they received follow-on funding to do the RESOLVE study from the NIH. They've received infrastructure funding from the Muscular Dystrophy Association to sustain what has been built, if you will, over the next 3 years, which then gave us the privilege of putting some more resources behind it in order to expand it like that. So we're proud to be a part of this. We're proud to be on the executive board of this. Dr. Arjman is. And this one thing, I hesitate to say a percentage, but is a real value add to why so many industry partners are considering working in our space. And this is an invaluable infrastructure that we could not do without, and that has expedited therapeutic development in our space. I am confident of that. And again, I can't crow about it enough, if you will. So what is our response through our ongoing research projects? One thing that Jamshed has done is he's reached out to all of our researchers. He's sent out a survey to ask them how they're doing, how's their research, how's their work, how's their safety. What are the things that they're excited about? What are the innovations that they have stumbled on? As well as what are the things they're concerned about. And literally, we've not quite compiled the results, but I asked for these. I said, listen, you got to give me what you can on Monday. So this past Monday, I received this. And interestingly, during the shutdown, over 80% of our researchers have been working remotely, and less than 10% have experienced furloughs. I mean, our heart hurts for the 10%, but we're so glad that movement is still continuing. And again, remote work includes analysis of previous data, writing papers that will be published. And, if you publish papers, then it becomes fact eventually, and other people join and in the dialogue. And so that's very important. Grant proposals and contingency plans. Innovative plans being implemented. This was exciting. Here were some. I highlighted just 2 of them for us today. It seems that they have increased collaborations and networking partnerships with other groups to share unpublished data. This is more key than I can almost underline. It is when the barriers come down and cross-pollination happens. I believe Dan Perez, our founder, once told me, he said, that's when the magic happens. I think those were his words. And that's true. And so this is a very good thing that has come out of these ongoing, the ongoing COVID crisis, and exploring telehealth and surveys for clinical visits and some of those kinds of things. But what have been the major concerns, and what are the major concerns? And again, delay in research, delay, adjusting patient care, reduced productivity, some of that is. But what's most critical to us, and what I want all of us to understand and know, is their big concern is the loss of funding as priorities from government agencies might shift. I mean, it seems like we have an unlimited bucket of money that the government can throw, but it's really not. And when tightening comes because of our response to the COVID crisis, they're really afraid that the NIH the funding line might go up and allow fewer and fewer grants. We've also heard that some of our sister agencies that have been really, really pretty solid funders of muscular dystrophy research broadly, obviously they might be impacted financially, and some of their funding might be cut back. And so we need to make sure that we have enough resources. And I believe together we can. I believe that together we can to step in where we need to step in, to support where we need to support, to provide bridge funding where we need to provide bridge funding. And so we're taking this very seriously as a part of our strategic effort moving forward. Because we know that research is the very basis that's going to get us to our ultimate goal of treatments and a cure. Interestingly, while you might think that nothing has occurred, we actually took part in a recruitment fashion in a COVID-19 study of FSHD families. Dr. Tawil on a CTRN, Clinical Trial Research Network call with Dr. Statlin and Tawil, they asked us, and Dr. Tawil and his staff did the study, asked us if we would help recruit for a study called Patient Focused Survey to assess the effects of COVID-19. The participation in this survey was broad, and 714 families responded. It was amazing. Two other surveys, I just glanced over my watch and I need to really hurry. Two other surveys, or two other registry studies are taking place unhindered. And that's very exciting to us. And again, it's part of our third workshop that we're planning for later on in the year. Just to run down a quick little history, we are right here, 2020, targeted workshops. We have come down this road so far toward treatments and a cure. We understand and know that we need to drive projects to eliminate the existing gaps, and that we believe that we need to finish those projects, evaluate the impact. We believe that in a couple of years, we'll have as many as maybe 5 trials that are happening, along with the first submission to the FDA for potential therapy. Somewhat that's aspirational, but we believe that it's also attainable. I did want to give you, especially you who are leaders among us, kind of a real quick update, if you will, financial update. We've taken in $1.17 million, which is over our budget, and it's over actuals from last year. Now, that's because of a larger bequest that we received, about $335,000 to start the year, as well as payroll protection program that we, through our chief financial officer and our admin staff, were able to acquire. And so that's helped buoy us up. So we understand that there might be some underlying weakness, and we understand that that underlying weakness is certainly not your fault. That many of you give from assets, and those assets have devalued and gone up and down, it seems, on any given particular day. But let me say this, based on these numbers, if we need to take remedial action, we're prepared to, but we don't want to. For all of the reasons I stated and so much more, we want to continue to fuel the engine that's going to continue to move us forward. Interestingly enough, our expenses have been reduced because of cancellation of in-person conferences and some other things, travel, et cetera, by almost $400,000. So we've actually saved some money there. We don't want to continue like this forever, but that's the good side of all of this, and we're glad of that. A very quick summary: during this time of sequester, it might seem as though all activity, all progress has stopped or stalled, but I think you can say now with me, it hasn't. Together, we've seen significant increases in engagement from our community through value-added virtual connections. While some progress has slowed, research and therapeutic development in FSHD is moving forward, and we believe our timelines for achieving our goal are still intact. We really do. While financially sound, remedial action might be required if support is hindered due to declining market conditions or job layoffs and some of those things. We understand that, we sympathize, and we want to be good stewards of the resources we have. And so we're prepared to go either way, but we do want to move forward as prudently as possible. And together, I believe we're amplifying the voice, focusing the efforts of the patient community worldwide. And I couldn't be prouder to be a part of this. A small body of determined spirits, fired by an unquenchable faith in their mission, can alter the course of human history. You are altering the course of human history for those with FSHD. And I'm so proud to be part of you, a small part of you. And thank you so much for your engagement, your continued effort, your support and encouragement. And we are stronger together.
So this is June. I just wanted to let all of our attendees know that Mark is available to answer questions. You can post them in the Q&A tab of the Zoom window.
I'm taking all their time.
They're thinking.
They're thanking you.
There are many. Here's one. Oh, Dave, from Mary Albert, no questions, but thanks for all the information. I might mention there was a question about science and research, asking if recent work on developing a vaccine for COVID-19, especially the one from Moderna, I guess, which is supposed to be targeting the mRNA of the vaccine, of the COVID-19 virus, might have any applications for FSHD. And I've been asked this question before, and I don't see a direct connection. I'll have to ask Jamshid, our CSO, sometime about this, but you know, vaccine involves getting the body to mount an antibody defense against the invading molecule, the virus. And in FSHD, what researchers think happens is that DUX4 is normally only expressed in the very first days of gestation. When you're an egg to a 4-cell stage, DUX4 comes on, it unleashes a burst of other genes, and then it shuts off. And many of these other genes also shut off after a few days. They're just involved in the very beginning to get the whole program going. And so when DUX4 is expressed in the muscle, the body doesn't recognize it because it doesn't have an immune system when it's in the 2-cell stage. And so it thinks that it's a foreign invading molecule and attacks it and triggers the muscle degeneration. That is a hypothesis. It's not, it has yet to be proved. So I would say, but based on that, creating a vaccine, as it were, against DUX4 might actually be detrimental rather than beneficial. But again, only research can really answer those types of questions.
June, I think there's this one I do want to answer because this was just decided yesterday among all of our chapter leaders.
Yeah.
The discussion around the walk and rolls and the impact of those have been such a vital asset for us at expanding and enlarging our community. And you know, our chapter leaders, I can't say enough good about them. They're just moving through this anyway, so to speak. But there was high concern about the ability in the fall to conduct a lot of our walk and rolls that were planned. We had 15 to 17 planned, I believe. Amy Beckier, I know for one, had one in July that shifted to virtual. And yesterday, as of yesterday, they are all in with rolling out a virtual national walk. And you know, stay tuned. Those things are going to happen. It's going to be local, but virtual, and national. All of it's going to be virtual, but it's going to be local as well as national. And it's going to have some amazing components to it. Those two things I can tell you because I know who's working on it. But all of our chapter directors said, I'm in, color me there. You know, we're going to do this. We'll get this done. And so I appreciate their engagement, their involvement, their excitement around this. I appreciate the staff, our community engagement team that has come up with options for this so that we can keep going on. And it's still, we're going to be doing it. We are going to be doing this. So I wanted to underline that. How many companies are actively engaged in drug development? I lose track, and actively is a continuum. I would say there are probably a half a dozen to 8 that are working on a solution. There are probably that many more that are investigating in some form or fashion, and sometimes they tell us and sometimes they don't. So there are a number, a relatively large number for a rare disease state that's really active and working in our space. What have I missed?
There's a question about the Connect classroom. Is it an abridged version of what the conference would have been?
Well, June, you're really in charge of that, so you're best positioned to handle it.
Okay.
To answer that question.
I will then answer it. It is reduced from a 1.5 or 1 2/3 day conference to a 1-day event, just because we know people have only so much tolerance for sitting in front of a screen. But we picked all the most impactful presentations that were being planned for FSHD Connect that we thought would be suitable for doing over an online version. We are not doing the smaller breakout sessions and workshops because those are really tailored for in-person, face-to-face, counseling and demonstrations of various types of medical devices and so forth. So those are going to be offered through a different type of meeting that we're still planning. So keep your eyes open for announcement probably next year for a new type of activity that we'll be doing to bring that type of workshop based education to you. So anyway, so the Connect Classroom is a 1-day event, really looking at all the highlights, the latest in research and medical care, drug development. And there will be a social component as well, where you'll be able to mix with the speakers and your fellow community members. It's going to be a great event. Thank you.
You bet, you bet. There's a question, and I thought of an answer. Do you have any info whether Fulcrum thinks the losmapimod is working? Boy, if I did, I'd tell you. But they're kind of mum about that. Now, I would love. I assume the same thing you do in this Q&A. I'm assuming they are, if they're extending the trial, that they believe it is. We are hopeful, but they've really given us no official word, or not even word under the table.
Yeah. Well, I will say, you know, we really can't assume anything, and if they told us, they would have to shoot us because that's considered material information. They would be in violation of Securities and Exchange Commission laws if they let out any word at all about whether they thought the trial was working or not. But what I will say is, obviously, they have invested a tremendous amount in the trial, and so from a company standpoint, it's probably not an option for them to drop it. And they've been very creative in how they adapt to the COVID-19 situation. And the silver lining is that because of this, they were forced to kind of redesign the trial to be longer than it was originally. And that's actually a good thing for FSHD because it's a slow progressing disease. So they, in fact, will be able to collect probably better data than their original design, you know, and so another instance of you know, the creativity of people working to make the best out of the situation.
Yeah. One other question, since this year's patient conference will be virtual, will we consider a patient conference in 2021? We have in our annual flow and program that would probably not be possible because we considered it. We considered bumping it off until 2021. We are planning or having ideas about what we might call connect camps, and we're not really ready to roll those out yet. But those might occur, and those are times when we can get together and be a part. You know, one of the things that our committee has said is one of the supreme values of the Connect Conference is truly how it's named. It's connecting. It's connecting with each other from around across the country. And we are working on things. Our staff's working on a process that might be facilitated through some regional gatherings in 2021. So we're going to somehow consider substituting that because we want to try to facilitate our connection, as I mentioned. Next steps in the Fulcrum trial, phase 3. Before this, I do know that they were looking at a phase 3 in early 2021 and working toward it and all that. I think that was just kind of public knowledge. They didn't, I think I picked that up in one of our chapter meetings where Fulcrum was sharing both the trial and the process, and they answered that question. It might be a little delayed, but yes, they're planning a phase 3.
Okay, I think we are at the end of the hour. So Heidi, I think you have a few closing remarks to make.
I do. Mark, first of all, thanks for doing this. This was great. This is so informative. And thank you to everyone out there who took the time to log in and listen to what we're doing, how we're moving forward. I just have 2 little quick things. Just a reminder that tonight we have the FSHD Society Radio live on Facebook. It's every Wednesday at 7 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. This is with Tim Hollenbeck, and it's just an open-end conversation. You can post your questions, you can call in, you can comment. It's just a nice way to connect. And then tomorrow we'll have our next installment of our sequester camp, which is 1 p.m. Eastern Standard Time every Thursday. And tomorrow we're going to have Michelle Mellion, PhD, who is going to discuss Fulcrum's preparatory studies for clinical trials. So it should be a good one. So just log in. You can register online and then log in, and we'll see you then. Mark, again, thank you. And everybody out there, thank you so much for joining us. And we will definitely have a follow-up, and we'll talk to you soon. Thank you.